Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Stauffer, Community Relations Director with Elville and Associates, and welcome to our webinar today, the fifth in the Elville Webinar Series Wellness Series, titled Purpose and Health, the Important Link. So how this will work today, if you're new to our webinars, if you are, welcome. We're glad you're here. And if you're a frequent attendee, we thank you as well for your support of the Elville Webinar Series. So you as the attendee are in listen only mode. However, we're going to try something different today as we want this to be as interactive as possible. We're going to try unmuting attendees at various times during the presentation when Ellen and Michelle request and are looking for your feedback. So while you can still post your feedback through the questions panel and chat feature, feel free to speak up and let your voice be heard, and we'll see how it goes. If you'd like to talk, you can raise your hand in the panel that is on the right-hand portion of your screen. I will try to unmute you to give you the floor for as long as you like. So we'll see how it goes. It's a new technology here and feature through GoToWebinar that we're going to be using. So we'll see how it goes. I think it'll hopefully be well received. Also, you received the presentation by email from me this morning for your convenience to take notes on it if you wish. If for some reason you did not receive the presentation this morning, it is currently located in the handout section in the panel on the right-hand portion of your screen to download at this time. Everyone will also receive a post-webinar feedback email right after the presentation, and we do ask that you please just take a couple minutes to fill out this simple survey to offer us your feedback about the presentation, and we do value your feedback and read every comment. Elville and Associates works every day with families, with clients with ideals of client education, collaboration, and compassion in mind. We're always available for consultations to discuss your family's planning needs and look forward to being a resource to you in any way now and in the future. So at this time, I'd like to welcome back and turn the webinar over to our presenters, Ms. Ellen Platt of the Option Group and Dr. Michelle Fritsch of Retirement Wellness Solutions, who will share a bit more about themselves and get started with the presentation. So welcome back, Michelle and Ellen. It's great to see you again, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm Ellen Platt with the Option Group. I'm a geriatric care manager or aging life care manager, and we help families solve problems and navigate longevity. So we end up with a lot of different scenarios. We have nurses and care managers who help people just figure out what's the best next step for them given their circumstances. So in the work that we do, we often see that towards the end of life, or as people even retire earlier than end of life, is when it's really important to have a purpose. Otherwise, we often see depression and anxiety and just loss of motivation. And so what we're trying to do today is kind of bring that to people's attention. So first off, you're aware of it, but then we have some strategies to help take care of that, to help address it and keep it from being an issue that kind of makes it difficult for you to move forward.
Absolutely. And I'm Dr. Michelle Fritsch. I'm a clinical pharmacist, and my focus is in people that are nearing retirement and early in retirement for all the reasons that Ellen just said. After all my years in practice, I saw too many people who seemed fine, and then they retired and their health plummeted, and we realized how preventable that was. So that's our focus today, and we're so glad that you joined us. There we go. And together we've formed a more self-guided version of all the tips and the best information that we share with clients that's called Propel Comprehensive Wellness. And so we'll tell you more about that later if we've got some time.
So the series that we've been doing is about wellness, and we've talked about different types of wellness, not just financial wellness or health, but we've been talking about spiritual wellness and purpose and things like that. So we have often kicked off these webinars with some breathing exercises to help reduce stress. So we're going to do one a little bit different than what we've done before. You may recall we just did some deep breathing. We also did the box breathing where you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. Today, what we're going to do is 4 quick breaths to get fuller and fuller and fuller, and then 4 quick breaths out. So it's going to look like this. So we're going to do that, and I'm just going to count, but if you can do that, and when you're breathing in each time, try to fill up your entire abdomen. So sitting up straight, opening your chest and having lots of room to do that. So we're going to breathe in 4 times, very quick breaths to get a full breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. And breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. So you can just breathe a little bit normally. We don't people get lightheaded, but this is something that you can kind of do on your own. When we're breathing in through our nose and out through our mouth, we're activating what's called the vagal nerve, and that is a way that helps us to calm ourselves, to release some stress and anxiety. So just another tool you can take with you and just try it when you have time, when you're in a relaxed state, and hopefully you'll find that that's a quick, easy, free tool that you always have with you.
Good.
So last time, go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to say, we've got a poll that we'll put up about this time, and then go ahead.
Okay. Last time we had talked about SMART goals, and we were talking about the new year and how do we figure out what we want to put on our list of things that are important that we want to prioritize for the new year. So a lot of people made a list and then picked the ones that are the biggest. So just wondering, did you create SMART goals for 2022 based on either something you were doing on your own or perhaps you saw our last webinar? So we're going to put up a poll. Did you create your SMART goals for 2022? And how many? Is it 1 or 2, 3 to 5, or more than 5, or none at all? So if you make your selection.
These polls are fun. It's a good way for us to kind of gauge where everyone is and where their interests are and which of the things we do are the most helpful for you.
Ellen and Michelle, can you see those responses coming in, or would you like me to share them with you?
If you could share them, that'd be great.
Okay. So with about 2/3 of the people responding, we have 25% saying yes, 1 to 2, 42% saying yes, 3 to 5, 0% saying yes, more than 5, and 33% saying no.
Okay.
I'm really impressed with all the SMART goals
Yeah.
that were selected.
And just to review, the SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. So just as a recap, or for those that weren't with us last time, it is really trying to break down your goals into small, manageable steps that are attainable. They're very specific. Is there a way to measure it? Is it attainable? And I was listening to a podcast this morning, and they were talking about goals being attainable if it's something that you're able to control. So the example they gave was, I want to run a race. I want to win a race in next week. Well, you can't control your competition. You can't control the other people that are in it, but you can control your training, or you can control your best time ever and try to beat yourself. So there are ways to still have the same goal, but we measure it differently, we track it differently, and we have our successes differently. And then just timelines on those little goals that you break down.
Yeah, because a big goal all at once can be overwhelming. So breaking it up into smaller attainable chunks, I know it's the only way I get through my week. Jeff, there was the next poll question was kind of current status of those goals.
Okay, I'm going to launch that now.
So statistically, by the end of January, many people have no longer working on their goals. So if you made goals for 2022, how many are you still working towards them? One, some of them, all of them, or none? And you can cast your vote.
Telling a story on my family, my husband has really been diligent working toward a goal that he had, and he's already lost 10 pounds. He's doing great. And I'm trying to do it alongside him, and I've lost 0 pounds. So I'm not quite sure how that happens, but he's doing great.
So with the votes having been cast, we have 20% at 1, 30% saying some of them, 40% saying all of them,
Wow.
10% saying none.
I'm so impressed. Very good. I'm trying to make the slide go forward. There we go. And this is the next poll question, but we talked, was that last month, Ellen? About control of your health journey. And so we're curious how you would rate that at this point. And Ellen, what does that mean to you? What would it, as you've worked with clients through the years, what differentiates somebody that has more control of their health journey?
Well, I think a lot of it is, like we're talking about, is having goals that are attainable, measurable, specific, being able to really focus, mindfully focus on what it is that's really important for you. As we mentioned, there are a lot of things that are out of your control, but what we want to do is focus our goals on things that we can control and ways to make us feel better holistically, not just our mood, not just our weight or our health, but really holistically what's most important for us. And do we feel like we're taking strides and making strides to improve it or make those small changes that will make us feel better? How about you, Michelle?
Well, I'm just thinking, I was just speaking with a client, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago now, who we've talked about this a lot. And she said now when she starts to feel anxious, she first asks herself, do I have any control over this? And she's found that by recognizing when there's not a thing she can do about the particular situation, she's able to calm her anxiety. That's huge. And I think we could probably all ask ourselves that question more often, or can I control this, or what aspect of this can I impact, and then focus your efforts there.
So with the votes having come in, we have 0% at a 1, 17% at 2, 83% at 3, and 0% at 4.
Okay, so mostly in control. Good.
Yeah, I think that's honest answers. So today we're going to kind of add a new element to all of this, which is the purpose. And some people don't like that word, so if you prefer, we can call it meaningful, what makes your life meaningful, or what keeps you fulfilled. And we're going to make the case for why we've seen health closely align itself with people who've identified their purpose. And one of the fun parts, I think, of purpose is what was your purpose earlier in life may or may not have anything to do with what brings you joy and fulfillment in this phase of life. So if you were focused on being a parent, a spouse, your role in a company, whatever was your occupation, a leader in a community or civic group, whatever was your purpose in a previous phase, your purpose now might not be related at all. So we're going to explore that a little bit. And this sort of makes me laugh. There was a Harvard study done before this pandemic ever hit, and they found that 96% of executives, this is long before COVID, said they were burned out at work, and over 50% of the workforce was actively seeking other employment. Now here we are a few years later in the midst of the Great Resignation, and all of this feels turned upside down. And one of the elements seems to be that people are recognizing, if I'm going to spend my whole day doing something, I want it to be something I care about. And there seems to be this huge shift. And the reason it matters is we know that when people are doing those things that really bring out the best of them, that aligns with their purpose and what they really want to do, their memory is sharper, their heart is much healthier, they don't get so stressed out, they're not feeling so much anxiety, their immune system is a lot healthier, they live longer, and overall their wellness is greater. So could we put up the next poll question, which is sort of, how do you all feel? How aligned with purpose do you feel at this point? And if you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, choose the not really, because we're going to talk about it some more. Ellen, as you've watched people, and a lot of times you're working with people after something has happened and they're trying to navigate that, do you see a difference between those that feel sort of lost and those that feel like I've got to get better because of I've got to do XYZ?
Yeah, I do see that sometimes when you've had somebody who has had a significant medical event, which really changed their perspective. Fortunately, they lived through that and had the opportunity to, instead of saying I shoulda, woulda, coulda, is I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to, all these things I wanted to do, all the things that I thought would make me feel good, like volunteering and mentoring or traveling or whatever it is. They, took the opportunity. I guess that was the catalyst to make them put some of those things aside and say, I really want to do some of those things that were really meaningful for me, but for whatever reason, life got in the way and I just haven't done them yet.
It's a great example.
Okay, responses are in. Has some varied responses, which is, I think, why we're all here today. So 33% saying yes completely, 25% saying yes somewhat, 17% saying maybe, another 25% saying not really.
That's kind of good. It gives us a lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I love this quote. People who labor all their lives but have no purpose to direct every thought and impulse toward are wasting their time, even when hard at work. And what amazes me about this is it was written in AD 121, nowhere close to 2022. So we can be busy, but busy is not the same as fulfilled. And that's, I think, the main point we want to make today. This is a photo of people over the age of 100, and a colleague of mine had a chance to interview each of these people. And the common factor he found was they each were passionate about something, and often, again, it had nothing to do with what they did in their primary career, but they were passionate about what they were doing, and it just kept them going day after day after day. And when you have that thing, excuse me, you tend to be more socially active, because depending on what that thing is, it often means that you're out interacting with other people. It kept them more physically active because whatever it was they were working on, they needed to be there, they needed to get there, they needed to be reliable to be there. And they stayed more mentally sharp because they were constantly working on this thing that interested them. So overall, their health was much better. The gentleman in the bottom in the blue shirt and the photo in the upper right, the Joe Stonis Park, his story is he was some sort of business person in the Northeast, and he retired to Florida. And when he got off the plane in Florida, he was like, where are all of the trees? And so from the time that he arrived in Florida for retirement until well into his well past age 100, he had initiatives that got other people involved in planting trees. So he started with, he planted some trees, and then he started engaging other people. And I forget how many thousands of trees have been planted in Florida because of his efforts. And this park was named for him. So trees had nothing to do with what he did earlier, but he became passionate about getting some trees planted in what he saw as a very barren area, and he had a big impact.
Great story.
Joe is sort of not a real Joe, but a compilation of some things that Ellen and I have seen over and over again. So in this case, it was an executive. He had a great career, very well respected for what he did, sort of had everything in control. And later, when he retired, he completely lost his sense of self-identity, lost who he was, and his health started to spiral. And now he's laying in a hospital bed. He's had a stroke. And as we talk through his story and how he got here, we realized it was completely preventable. So there are currently 10,000 people every day turning 65 in the US. Isn't that an astounding number? And not that people necessarily retire at 65, but it's sort of the benchmark that we've thought of over the years. So with that many people, we're finding now that that number is growing so rapidly, we're seeing more frequently people who reach that point without a plan and their health plummets. A piece of that and an indicator of that is that this statistics organization has found that people over the age of 65 watch on average over 51 hours of television a week. And that was pre-pandemic. They redid their statistics recently, and they think it's gone up by 2 or 3 hours a day. That's a lot of television, and there is nothing healthy about watching television. If anything, for your mental health, it probably takes you the other direction. So why would people sit in front of the television? One of the ways that I've found to describe this is that I've seen too many people who go through their life, whether they work or they're raising kids or whatever, things seem fine, and then it declines rapidly for 3 primary reasons. One is their health just sort of disintegrates, and sitting in front of the television 7 to 10 hours a day would cause that to happen. The divorce rate in people over 50 has gone up significantly to the point that 1/4 of divorces are in people who've been married over 20 years. That was not the case in previous generations and in previous times, and I think there are a lot of reasons for that. It's rising rapidly. And then the one that drug me out of my career and said, you've got to focus on this, is the number of people who are kind of like the Joe scenario. They were fine, seemed fine. Then they retire and they just lose their sense of self. And there's this downward spiral that can lead to a dark despair. And the suicide rate has gone up significantly in people in those right around retirement or pre-retirement years. And again, I've not seen new statistics since the pandemic, but there's some evidence that that has probably gotten worse as well. But what Ellen and I do is we find if we can help people with a plan to get control of their health, to not just let it happen to them, but get some control of their health and identify that purpose, that's when those retirement years are the golden years, where you can do so many things that you've always planned to do. Your body can keep up, your mind can keep up, you've got the energy and the stamina and the motivation to do all of those things. So let me stop there for a second. Does anyone have anything they want to add or questions?
Again, if you do have questions, you can note them in the questions panel. You can raise your hand in the panel as well, and I can unmute you, or you can note your thoughts in the chat box. Lots of different ways.
Beautiful. Ellen, anything you want to add at this point?
No, I think you're doing great, Michelle.
Thank you.
We have a gentleman, friend of the firm, Joe of Joe Sperling Insurance, who says, I'm still working and have no intention to retire. And Joe is around that age that you were referring to. Not to call you out, Joe. You look great.
And you know what? You make a great point that retire doesn't mean stop everything and watch television. But there might come a time in life where you keep the best stuff and you find a way to get rid of some of the things that are just drudgery or cause you stress or you just don't like them. You know, it's a time when maybe you can give yourself permission to focus where you really want to be focused. I also find sometimes, and I'm not picking on you, but sometimes when people don't retire, it's because they can't see what's ahead. And so my favorite analogy is if you've got mud all over your windshield and you're driving, you're probably going to stop and not push the accelerator because you can't see where you're going. But if we can clear that windshield and it looks great ahead, which means you've figured out, well, what else would I like to do in this lifetime? And how could I get there? Then people are kind of pushing the accelerator and moving forward to the point that I've had several people move their retirement closer by 6 months to a year once they realized, well, there are some more things I want to do and here's how I could do them. And so now I'm ready to let go. I kind of think of it as if you had a big tree in your front yard and you wanted to pull it up, it would be very hard to do. It's very firmly rooted. But if you could dig down in the roots and kind of loosen up the dirt around those roots, then it would be easier to transplant that tree. So I see that sometimes with people I work with, that once they find another spark, another thing that they're excited about, that sort of starts to loosen up the roots. So they're not so firmly grasping onto what they're doing now, but they start to get ready and they're getting excited about that thing that might come next.
So Joe has some further comments. He says the Joe that you referenced earlier, he said Joe's story is fairly typical, sadly.
Yeah.
Without a purpose, we are simply treading water, no forward motion. Age-related declining health is very prevalent, and I'm still working and have no intention to retire. I set my own schedule, and I still enjoy what I do.
Beautiful. I'm so glad for you. That's very good. And if you could box that and hand it to others, that would be great.
He says 4 elements for a successful retirement: interests, money to pursue interests, health to pursue interests, others to share interests with,
Yeah.
and then if I want to take off a week or two, you can. So it's a nice thoughts from Joe. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. You're in a great
Joe.
position.
Joe, we're going to bring you up as a panelist next time.
That's right.
Join us up here.
That's right. So this just kind of reiterate things you've heard us say so many times. But when you think about health or wellness, it's so much more than do you have diabetes and did you break your leg last week? So much more. And so there's the physical, there's the mental, which I keep seeing data that especially since the start of the pandemic, most people, if not everyone, has taken a kind of a hit to their mental health, dealing with more anxiety, more depression, more exhaustion, shorter fuses, get angry, things just really upset you that wouldn't have bothered you before. Socially, all this social distancing, people not being able to visit with one another for fear of spreading the virus, that has had a huge impact. We know Ellen and I were in a conversation earlier today where we know that in assisted living and long-term care facilities, those shutdowns when people could not be with their families had a huge negative impact. And then emotionally, which kind of comes back to that fuse, do you just want to cry at the drop of a hat, or do you get angry really easily? More people are talking about that being the case with all the stress that people are enduring. And then spiritual health, whatever sort of that anchor of hope and stability and who's going to help me if I can't do it myself, whatever that looks like, is an important part of health. And then I add the element that this purpose, aligning yourself with those things that bring you personally greatest fulfillment, it's all part of a package, an important package put together.
And so one of the things in terms of wellness, we've talked about physical wellness and mental wellness, social, emotional, spiritual wellness, is really important to be mindful and always kind of check in with ourselves. But what's also important is rest in each of these areas. So sometimes you have to slow down before you can go fast, and really being mindful about getting physical rest, mental rest, social rest, emotional rest, and spiritual rest, because they're all different forms of rest. And I'd also like to put in there that there are two other kinds of rest that we need to be mindful about, and that is sensory rest and creative rest. So there's just something to think about as you're thinking about purpose and thinking about wellness in all aspects of your life. Part of wellness, not only working on it to improve it, but also pressing pause to find rest in each of those areas.
That's a brilliant point. Does that lead to anything anyone wants to make sure that they want to say right now while we're on this topic? If not, be thinking about how you want to contribute to the conversation. So one way to identify what is going to bring me meaning in my next phase of life. I've got 4 questions, and I want you to take a little bit of time with each to just kind of do a self-inventory. So the first one is, what skills do you have? We accumulate those over time. It starts when we're really little and we learn to say dada and mama and get onto our feet, but we keep adding skills throughout our life. So what do you think you do best? And what do other people compliment about you? What did they say about you that you're really good at these things? And again, it might have nothing to do with whatever job you've had or that you have now, but what are your unique skills? And then the next one is what makes your heart jump? What do you love? What just captures your attention? When you're watching the news or you're in the grocery aisle and you see the magazines, what are the topics? What are the things going on in the world that really engage you? And I want to make a point at this point. Sometimes, especially retired couples, feel like they need to pick the same thing and do the same thing and be on the same page. I propose too much togetherness maybe is not so good. So it's okay to have those things you do together, but also those things that are your individual interests, because you are very individual people with different skills and different interests. So think about this in sort of both contexts.
I have a question here, Michelle.
Uh-huh.
So the question is, the question and comment. So I retired at 60 and spent 10 years, quote, giving back, unquote, to the community and the small children living in poverty in Baltimore. But after 70, health problems have really limited what I can do. I do as much as I can mentally when I'm able, but now at this age, it is harder to feel a purpose. What is purpose at age 80 or 90?
It's a great question. And a piece of it is related to how physically functional, do you feel like you are? How, like I know for a lot of people, it's altered recently because of exposure risk and making decisions. But at the same time, in the last few years, I think options have opened up now that the whole world is engaged online. And so all of that support and encouragement that you provided physically in Baltimore in that first decade of retirement, there are probably ways through writing, through phone calls, through video conversations, as you feel up to it. I would imagine there's still a number of ways that you could share with those groups or whoever else kind of makes your heart jump now. This reminds me of a person that was an athlete, an elite athlete, and then upon retirement from that became a coach and was well known for helping athletes get scholarships because he could coach them and help them develop certain skills that would make them more likely to get college scholarships. And then many went on to professional sports. And he felt like once he retired from his coaching, he was sort of put out to pasture, not sure what he could contribute anymore. And kind of like you're saying, he couldn't be out on the field, doing the hands-on coaching he didn't feel like anymore. And when we started this conversation, he wanted nothing to do with video conferencing. But COVID happened. His kids and grandkids are spread throughout the country, so he became a big fan of using this kind of technology because it was the way to stay connected, and it opened a unique door that now he could coach and relay his expertise to any kid anywhere on the planet. And so that was fun, what a door that opened for him that he could then start to pursue.
I've worked with some folks who were working with nonprofits and volunteering in ways like you're talking about down in Baltimore. And over time, they did have some health conditions that didn't allow them to be there or do the heavy lifting or the all day activities. But what they did is they still had a passion for that charity. And what they ended up doing was getting more into some fundraising or community outreach to let the community know, be aware of this organization, and maybe they'd want to support it. And just coming up with different ways that you can still use your time and talents and passions, but just a different way. Maybe it's writing letters, printing out and mailing information. Might be other ways, and you can talk to your organization about that.
Good example. The third question, so we've done skills. What are your unique skills and talents? What excites you? What makes your heart jump? What disturbs you? What is out there, very much to your point with children in Baltimore? What is broken and you want to be part of the remedy? There's a man I worked with recently who's an executive in the automobile parts world up in the Detroit area, and kind of went through some of these exercises, and he realized that this environmental change really bothers him. And he's an engineer by training. And so as he thought about it, he went out, first of all, he was looking for a nonprofit where he could maybe be on the board of directors, because by being on the board, he would have sort of insider information. He would have a more quickly learn what are the issues, who's doing what, where could I plug in. But he also went to Lowe's or someplace and bought just some solar panels to start understanding how greener types of energy work. And it was pretty funny. The power went out in his neighborhood, but he had a solar panel out on the back porch. So all the neighbors were bringing over their cell phones and computers and charging them on his solar panels. So that was his thing that he wants to fix. And so he's starting to loosen up the roots of his tree to figure out how can he plug in to greener energy sources. And then the last one is, what do you like? I want to be part of that. I want people to remember me because I helped solve this great crisis, or I provided energy and input to this thing. So when you think about your skills and interests, what excites you, what disturbs you, and where you want to be known in the world, that leaves me curious. Does that help kind of identify maybe some new ways that you want to plug in and find fulfillment?
So I'll speak real quick. At Elville Associates, Steve Elville, our CEO, president, managing principal, he created the Elville Center for the Creative Arts, which is our charitable organization. I'm the executive director of 7.5 years ago, because he wants that to be his lasting legacy. He's an attorney, of course, and has built a nice, mid-sized law firm here. We do a lot of great things, but that's his passion. Helping children that want to participate in music but don't have the means to do so, helping school music programs that are in need. That's his passion, and that's what he really wants to, build this charitable organization into something huge. Currently it's small but growing, but he foresees it, being 100 times bigger than it is right now at some point in the future. So that's what he wants to be his lasting impact when he is gone down the road. So,
and I bet he'll welcome some volunteers.
Absolutely, and volunteers are welcome, and input is welcome, and so I'm tasked with driving the train right now and welcome assistance. So no pressure on me.
Good point.
But I've enjoyed every second of it, and look forward to seeing what's next with it. So thank you.
Great example. Someone had asked earlier, what about people in their 80s and 90s and 100s who their health is not maintained well and there's maybe not a lot of time left? Something that just really impacted my thinking about this, and this has been probably 20 years ago, maybe more. Someone came up with something called the Eden Alternative. And I'm sure you've seen it. If you've got family or friends in nursing homes or assisted livings, a lot of these principles are put into place that basically everybody needs to be needed. So whatever that looks like, we all need for someone or something to rely upon us. And so sometimes that would be animals, the person that gets to pet the dog or feed the dog or work in the garden, plant the flowers. But there were two stories that really struck me. One was a woman that really physically could not do very much, but she was in charge of an African violet. And as long as she watered or asked someone to water that African violet, and she kept an eye on it and made sure that she recognized when it was too dry or too wet or not enough sun and that it had what it needed, that had an impact. Something was relying on her to care for it. In another one, there was a woman that was in a wheelchair who did not want to participate in physical therapy. She did not want to walk, stop asking. But they brought in this little baby chick, and she was so afraid that the other animals would hurt the chick or somebody would step on the chick that she got out of her wheelchair, put the little baby chick in the wheelchair, and she would push it around. So now here she is walking, what everyone wanted, but she's caring for this chick that became a rooster. And even as a rooster, it rode in her wheelchair and she pushed it around because that became her thing that relied on her efforts. Kind of ties in beautifully with this. Sometimes we get the best effect for our own well-being when we're helping others. I doubt there are any surprises here, but as you look through this list, it might give you those ideas of where your skills and your passions and the issues that you want to see resolved kind of all come together in some outpouring of your help to other people.
And a quote that I've heard is that your talents only matter if you use them. So Abraham Maslow was a psychologist and philosopher who came up with the Maslow's Hierarchy of needs, and you probably have heard that sometime in your history. It's been around a long time, and everybody has basic needs of food and shelter and love and wellness and the basic things, necessities for life. But there's this higher level of needs that people have too, and that is, the higher level things of ability to have freedoms, or to develop a talent or a skill, to be able to share with others, to mentor people, and then also be able to achieve something. And that's where purpose comes in too, is to have some kind of purpose is really important to be able to have that full pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy.
It's a good point.
I have a comment here. Says, seeing and hearing about all the bad stuff that happens to people helps us appreciate our small problems as being just that, small.
Yeah, sometimes it puts what we're going through in a different perspective. It may seem really big to us at the time, but we realize the journey that other people are having, and it does put it into a perspective for us.
This might feel like an extreme example, so maybe I should keep my mouth shut. But one of the most fulfilling things I did before I moved away from Maryland was met with kids being tried as adults in the Baltimore County Detention Center. And what I found with these boys and girls who were not yet 18 and had done whatever was they really lacked solid role models in their lives and people that just cared for them no matter what they did and who they could become as people. That was incredibly meaningful. And yes, it was scary the first couple of times of going down into the jail and realizing I couldn't get out by myself. But oh, my heart broke for these kids. Just the lack of some of the basic things that Ellen just went through in their lives to that point, and the fruitful opportunity to help them turn that around. This has been a great discussion. I love the comments you've made. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yep. So sometimes at the end we do a little like movement, stretching exercise, and rolling the shoulders is always good, and opening the chest and doing some breathing. But today our Let's Move is going to be more about let's move towards our purpose. So if you have a piece of paper, I'd like you to get that. And we just talked about sort of taking an inventory of your skills and your interests and your hobbies and things that you love and things that disturb you that you want to try to be a part of fixing, or what your legacy is going to be. So I know you probably came up with some ideas while we were going through that earlier in this presentation, but what I would like you to do now is just a couple of sentences. I want you to vision what your perfect day is. So think about it. What is your perfect day? Who are you with? What are you doing? Where are you? What are you trying to accomplish? If you had one day to spend, how would you spend that perfect day? Put down all the who, what, where, whens, and whys. And if anybody wants to share them in the chat or throw something out, feel free. And now these couple of sentences will give you a framework to reflect on and elaborate on later. But just glancing at this couple of sentences that you had, think about this question. Why is physical health important for my life purpose? For that perfect day, why is physical health important for my life purpose? And then another thought is, why is emotional health, gratitude, and mindfulness important for this perfect day and for my purpose? And then the third thing I want you to think about is, do I need to make any changes in my life or lifestyle today? So if anybody wants to share anything, feel free. But this is really just an exercise to get the juices flowing and some direction for what to think about and reflect upon over the next week or two. And maybe you'll surprise yourself with some thoughts that you have for a new purpose.
I love that.
One ideal situation is on the beach in 80-degree sunshine with about 10 close friends and a bucket of iced Coronas.
Love it.
And maybe some crabs.
Crabs. Yep. but you have relaxation of all those different areas we talked about. We have connectedness with others. We have contrast to what we're experiencing now with snow and coldness. And we have the tactile sensation of the sun in our skin and toes in the sand, and a nice cold Corona.
And it takes some movement to get out across that sand. Another one that I think I've shared with you all before, but to me, this is the height of relaxation. This was a man, an airline executive, who went through some of these questions and such, and was saying that he didn't want to retire, didn't anticipate retiring, and then as the family wanted more time with him and he considered it more, he realized the thing that breaks his heart is the number of babies that are born, especially premature, whose families are pulled. They've got to keep working, they've got to take care of the siblings, they just can't be there in the neonatal ICU all the time. But how important that bonding and nurturing is in those very first few weeks, both for the survival of that child, but to continue, especially the neurologic system, to continue developing. And so he goes to the ICU and skin times neonates. Talk about relaxing. That, to me, that sounds very relaxing. As we wrap up, if you don't mind, we will just tell you a little bit about Propel Comprehensive Wellness, because we're very excited about it. I consider our COVID blessing, because it sort of only came about because some of our plans to do some live events got foiled by COVID, and we realized how much we repeatedly tell clients that could be captured in short videos and workbooks where people could kind of work at their own pace through all of this really important information. So that's what Ellen and I have been working on, among other things, but Propel. And so Propel's a monthly subscription where you'll get a set of videos and workbooks each month. And we have 36 of these modules planned so that somebody can pull together their current health and really take charge of their health, kind of learn how to interact with the healthcare system in a way that will work in their best interest, but also plan for the future and know the resources, know these pitfalls and how to avoid them. And it gets into all those components of health that we've talked about. It does dive in more deeply into identifying and living purpose. And then it also helps people navigate today's healthcare. It pulls in the exercise, the nutrition, the mindfulness, all of these components, and you can see what Propel stands for. But our idea is to decrease the number of people that fall into those pitfalls because they've gone through this process and they know how to avoid it. So we think it should be an essential part of retirement planning. And whether you want to talk to us about the option group, retirement wellness, or what we've propelled together in Propel, I know we would love to talk to you and share more.
Well, thank you, Ellen and Michelle, for another great presentation. I think we all got a lot out of that based on the feedback and the information shared by all the attendees. So even though we didn't get the people speaking, I think we got more people interacting this time, which I think, finding your purpose is something that is so important. And I think we kind of hit the nail on the head there. And we'll build on that for the next webinar, which is on March 15th, third Tuesday of March. And we're going to be talking about keeping your brain active and healthy. So another one that hopefully y'all will tune into, tell your friends, and we'll keep this wellness series going. And please certainly check out the Propel Wellness. It's certainly a great resource. I've gone through it and would encourage you to give it a look. Ellen, I still have the link, and I'll go ahead and share that link for the introductory video in my follow-up email that I'll be sending out tomorrow morning to everyone. So thank you again. So I will send out the video for today's presentation. And please fill out post-webinar feedback. As I said, as always, we value and read every comment. And along those lines, that is where we got a couple of our webinars that are coming up, a couple of the ideas for our webinars that are coming up, along with our estate planning essentials webinars we have on Friday the 18th at 10. And for those that like evening webinars, we have one on Tuesday the 22nd at 7. We have a new series that we're starting with Mr. Andre Lingham. He is the founder of the Center of Elder Justice and Education, and also a 2-time Howard County Police Officer of the Year. This guy is pretty remarkable. I've talked to him several times as we've developed these. March 8th, financial exploitation, frauds and scams targeting seniors. This is something that our attendees have asked for, and so we are giving it to you. So we hope that you'll tune in. We've already gotten a tremendous response for the first one on March 22nd. Another one you've been asking for, identity theft, the illusion of privacy. And I've not sent an invitation out for that yet. It is on our website though, if you wanna respond and register for it already, but I'll send an invitation out for that in the next week or two. So we're looking forward to that very much, along with our estate planning essentials and also our wellness series with Ellen and Michelle on March 15th. So lots of good stuff coming up with webinar series as always, and we look forward to hosting you again soon. As for today, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Ellen. And thanks to all those that attended and participated. It always makes it even better when we have people that chime in and offer their thoughts and feedback. So have a great day, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you.